They say betrayal doesn't happen in an instant, that it builds in layers, tiny things you brush off until you can't anymore. But for me, it did happen in an instant. It happened in the dark, on a Tuesday night, in the quiet *Macy of a bedroom that used to feel like a sanctuary. And all it took was the way her hand pulled away from mine. I remember that night too clearly. I hadn't been sleeping well for weeks, but I pretended to be asleep, something I'd gotten good at. We were both lying in bed, backs to each other, breathing the same air but living on opposite planets. I reached across the sheets out of habit, not out of romance, just to touch something familiar. Her skin, her hand, something to remind me that there was still something left between us. But she flinched. It wasn't a dramatic jerk, just a subtle, sharp movement, like my fingers had startled her, or like she didn't want to be touched. And then I saw it, the faint glow of a phone screen, just barely visible through the blanket draped over her chest. She didn't know I was watching. She thought I had drifted off, and maybe that's why her guard was down. She tilted the screen just enough, and in the mirror on her vanity across the room, I caught the reflection. It wasn't a message from me. The name that lit up her screen wasn't one I recognized. No contact photo, just a first name. Generic, casual. The kind of name that's meant to mean nothing until it means everything. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just the message. It was her body language, the way she quickly slid the phone under the blanket like a kid hiding a note from the teacher. The way she stiffened. The way she pretended nothing had happened. She didn't even move to check if I saw. She just laid there, tense and silent, like maybe if she didn't breathe too loud, the moment would pass. But then I made the mistake of opening my eyes. Not fully, just enough to see her profile. And I guess that was all it took. She caught my eyes in the mirror, and something shifted. She didn't gasp, didn't panic, didn't fumble for a lie. She went straight into attack mode. "You're unbelievable," she said, voice sharp, but still low enough not to break the illusion that things were normal. "Do you seriously not trust me at all? You're always so paranoid. It's exhausting." Just like that. Accusation before explanation. Defense before denial. She skipped right past guilt and straight into making me the bad guy. I didn't even say a word. I hadn't done anything. But suddenly I was the one on trial, lying in the bed we bought together, in the house I helped build, being told I was crazy for noticing something that she obviously didn't want me to see. "It's just work stuff," she said, like that settled it. "You always think I'm hiding something. You always do this." Do what exactly? React to something suspicious? Ask questions when things don't add up? Notice when my wife pulls her hand away like I'm poison? I stayed silent. Not because I didn't want to speak, but because I knew if I opened my mouth, I'd say something I couldn't take back. And we weren't there yet. Not officially. Not technically. I needed more. Something solid. Something undeniable. Because up until that moment, all I had was a flash of a name and a gut feeling I could no longer ignore. She rolled over, facing away from me again, pulled the blanket higher. And just like that, she ended the conversation she had started, with no intention of ever giving me an answer. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, trying to breathe evenly so she wouldn't know I was still awake. My mind was racing, every part of me alert, like my body knew before my heart could catch up. I replayed the motion of her pulling her hand back, over and over again. It wasn't confusion or discomfort. It was instinct, like she didn't want me close to her, like she didn't want to be caught. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. I wanted to chalk it up to stress, or maybe a misread moment, but I couldn't. Not anymore. I'd made excuses before. Too many, honestly. Long meetings. Sudden work trips. Phone always on silent. Laughter at texts she wouldn't show me. I'd explained it all away for months, telling myself it was temporary, that we were just going through a rough patch, that maybe I was the one being distant. But that night, that one moment in the mirror changed everything. Because it wasn't just the message. It was the way she looked at me when she realized I'd seen. It was the way her voice didn't shake. The way she had a story ready, right there on the tip of her tongue. I've known Emma a long time. We've been through highs and lows. but I've never heard her sound more composed than when she was lying to my face. There's a kind of calm that only comes from preparation. And that's what broke me. It wasn't some heat-of-the-moment mistake. It was something she had prepared for, a defense she'd rehearsed, a counterattack ready to go before the accusation even left my lips. She turned the suspicion into my fault before I even said a word. She didn't deny. She redirected. She didn't panic. She performed. She didn't ask if I saw. She made me question whether I even had a right to look. That's when I knew. This wasn't new. This wasn't the first time. It may have been the first time I caught her, but it wasn't the first time she had something to hide. That's why her voice didn't crack. Why she didn't stumble. She'd already lived this scenario in her head, probably a dozen times. And in every version, she was the victim. I was the villain. And whatever was on that screen, whoever sent that message, they were a ghost I wasn't supposed to see. But I did. And I would see everything differently from that moment on. I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. I laid there, completely still, listening to Emma's breathing while mine came in shallow, measured waves. She fell asleep fast, or at least she pretended to. Either way, I was left in the dark with nothing but the quiet tick of the wall clock and my thoughts clawing at the inside of my skull. Funny how fast everything can shift. One moment, you're half asleep, just wanting to feel close to the person next to you. The next, you're lying awake trying to figure out if you ever really knew them at all. That message, that name, it played on a loop in my mind like static I couldn't shut off. I couldn't unsee it. Couldn't unknow it. But more than that, it cracked something open. It made me look at things I'd been actively choosing not to see for months. I didn't want to admit it before, but now the signs were impossible to ignore. Like how she'd started coming home late, blaming emergency meetings or client calls that just happened to fall perfectly into dinner hours, especially on Fridays, or how those meetings always ended just late enough that she'd already eaten. Even though I'd still be sitting there, stupidly optimistic, waiting for her to walk through the door, I used to make excuses for her. I told myself it was the promotion, the pressure, the new boss. I even remember defending her to friends when they asked why she wasn't around anymore. But now it felt like I'd been rehearsing lines in someone else's lie. I thought about her phone habits, too. When we first got together, she'd leave it anywhere. Kitchen counter, couch, bathroom sink. Never cared who saw a notification or read over her shoulder. Now, it was always on silent, always face down, always carried into the bathroom, even for a 2-minute shower. I used to joke that she was more attached to that thing than to me. She laughed the first few times. Then she stopped laughing altogether. Said I was being weird, insecure, controlling. That word stuck with me, controlling. It was how she shut me down every time I asked a question that made her uncomfortable. Not curious, not concerned, controlling. And maybe for a while I believed her. Maybe I thought, yeah, maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe I just need to chill out. She's under pressure. I'm under pressure. This is what adulthood feels like, right? But then there were the weekends. The ones where she suddenly had to visit her friend Sophie in another city. This vague, always available bestie whose apartment I'd never seen and whose number wasn't saved in Emma's phone. At least not under that name. I had met Sophie once, years ago, at some mutual friend's birthday. She was nice, quiet, definitely not the wild weekend type. But Emma would come back from these girls' trips, tired in a way that didn't match the story. Like she'd been somewhere else mentally, emotionally, physically. She'd be distant for a day or two, then bounce back like nothing happened. I'd catch hints of perfume I didn't recognize on her scarf or buried in the laundry. Sometimes her suitcase would come back with new clothes still in the shopping bag. Expensive, folded too neatly, like she'd never worn them but didn't want to explain why she bought them. And I explained all of it away. I gave her the benefit of the doubt because I loved her. Because that's what love is supposed to be, right? Trust until proven wrong. But now the proof was everywhere. I just hadn't wanted to look hard enough. Even our dog, Bruno, started acting differently around her. I noticed it a few weeks back. How he'd hesitate at the door when she came home. Tail low, ears flat. Not scared, exactly, but confused. like he wasn't sure which version of her was walking in. Dogs know things we don't. That much I've learned. Sometimes at night, she'd get into bed after me, well past midnight, smelling like the outside world. Not like smoke or sweat or wine. Just someone else. A different cologne. A different shampoo. I didn't ask. I told myself I was being ridiculous. That she probably hugged someone, brushed past someone on the subway, borrowed someone's coat. Whatever excuse I could think of to avoid the truth. And then there were the changes to her. She started dressing up more, like way more, just for casual things. Grocery store runs in heels. Makeup done for a quick meeting. New lingerie that I never saw on her. Tags still on, buried in drawers she assumed I wouldn't open. She'd also become happier. Not in the way that made me happy, not with me. Just this strange glow she carried in and out of the house. Private joy I wasn't part of. She started humming again. That hit me the hardest, I think. Because when we first started dating, she used to hum while brushing her hair, folding laundry, watering plants. It was this little window into her being at peace. Then, for years, it disappeared. Life got harder. Work got louder. Stress * led the hum. But now it was back, and it didn't include me. She was happy again. Just not with me. All these little things, these moments I ignored, they weren't coincidences. They were building blocks of a truth I didn't want to face. And now that the curtain had been pulled back, I couldn't unsee it. I kept thinking about that moment in the mirror. Her hand pulling away. The glow of the screen. The prepared answer. The cold shift in her voice. There was no panic. No slip. No, oh my God. I didn't mean for you to see that. She didn't even flinch. She leaned into the performance. And I was the one who froze. I'd never felt so far away from someone lying right next to me. In the morning, she acted normal. Made coffee. Asked if I wanted eggs. Hummed while scrolling through her phone. Screen carefully tilted away from me. And I played along. I smiled. Said I wasn't hungry. Took the coffee and went into my office. Closed the door and just sat there. Looking around at the life I'd built. Our life, wondering how long I'd been the only one trying to hold it together. I used to think love was measured by how hard you fight for it. How much you forgive. How much you can survive together. But now I'm starting to think love is measured by who's still showing up when no one's watching. And somewhere along the way, Emma stopped showing up. And I stopped noticing. Until now. Sometimes, suspicion feels worse than truth. Festers. Eats at your sanity. You start questioning not just the other person but yourself. Your judgment. Your memories. What's real, what's imagined. Suspicion is slow poison. But the truth? That's a blade. Quick. Sharp. Final. The truth came for me at 5:42 a.m. on a Saturday morning. The ping woke me up. At first, I thought it was Emma's alarm. She always set it way too early on weekends when she had gym mornings. But her phone was silent. Face down, of course. Mine was the one buzzing, screen glowing on the nightstand. A message from an unknown number. No context. No greeting. Just a single sentence followed by a video file. I thought you should know what she's really doing. For half a second, I considered not opening it. I was tired. My eyes were gritty. My brain still fogged from another night of pretending everything was okay. I could have turned over, gone back to sleep, let the doubt keep winning. But I didn't. I opened the message. Took a few seconds for the video to load. Long enough for my chest to tighten. For my hands to start shaking. For me to glance over at Emma, still sleeping beside me, her back turned. Like always. When it finally played, I felt the ground shift. It was footage from a parking lot. Dark. Early morning. Time-stamped from the day before. The camera was angled low, probably from a dashcam or a building security feed. The setting looked familiar, chain gym in the next town over. The one Emma insisted on switching to 6 months ago because it had better equipment. She'd always go alone. Said she needed her own space to work out and clear her head. In the video, I watched her walk out of the building. Emma. Hair tied up in a bun. Same gray zip-up hoodie she always wore. gym bag slung over one shoulder. She looked exactly how I knew her. Familiar, comfortable, except for one thing. She wasn't alone. A man stepped out beside her. Tall, athletic, maybe late 30s. He was wearing a sports jacket, something I hadn't seen before. Not that it mattered. What mattered was the way he moved next to her. Casual, confident, like this wasn't new. He held the door for her, smiled. She smiled back. But it wasn't the smile she gave strangers, or coworkers, or me. No, it was the smile of someone invited in. They stood close, not touching, not yet, but close enough to make my stomach twist. Then, as they reached the sidewalk, she reached out and touched his chest. Just for a second. Just with her fingertips. But it was there. That one small gesture. I paused the video, rewound, played it again. There it was, her hand on his chest, playful, familiar. The kind of touch you don't give to someone new, or someone you're trying to keep at arm's length. I let the video play out. They didn't go to their cars separately. He unlocked his car, a black sedan I didn't recognize, and she climbed into the passenger seat like she'd done it 100 times. No hesitation, no looking around, no guilt. He got in beside her. They pulled out of frame and drove off. No kiss, no drama, just two people who knew exactly what they were doing. My chest caved in, because that was it. That was the truth. Not a feeling, not a suspicion, not a theory, not a hunch. It was right there, pixelated, time-stamped, undeniable. I sat there in the dark, the glow of my phone painting my face in blue, while the woman I loved, the woman who had told me, just yesterday, I need these workouts to stay sane, slept beside me like she hadn't detonated the last intact part of our relationship. I looked at her then, really looked. Same face, same hair, same shape of her mouth. But it didn't look like her anymore. Because now I knew what that mouth whispered in someone else's ear. I wondered if she was dreaming, if she was somewhere else in her mind, if he was in there with her, the man in the video. I didn't cry. I wish I had. But I didn't. I just sat there, hollow. There's a kind of stillness that comes with finality. It's not peace. It's numbness. It's your body shutting down unnecessary systems so your brain can process the crash. I stared at the wall across from me. The painting she picked out at some overpriced gallery. The nightstand she'd forced us to buy to tie the room together. The diffuser she loved that made everything smell like fake lavender. All of it looked foreign now. Like I'd wandered into someone else's life. And maybe I had. I don't remember getting out of bed. I just know I was standing in the kitchen a few minutes later, staring at the coffee machine like it owed me answers. The sun hadn't risen yet. The sky was that bruised gray blue that makes everything feel colder than it is. I didn't make coffee. I didn't move. I just stood there while my heart recalibrated. Emma eventually came downstairs, yawning, stretching, acting like she hadn't just dropped a bomb I'd watched explode in HD. She smiled, asked if I wanted breakfast. I said no. She didn't notice anything was off. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Or maybe she was just that good at pretending. And I realized then, all those lies she'd told, all the weekends at Sophie's, the gym sessions, the silences, the distance, they were never clumsy, never random. She'd never once slipped. Because they weren't accidents. They were choices, planned, practiced, protected. She'd built an entire second life, and I was the fool standing in the ruins of the first one. Later that day, I watched the video again. Not because I needed more proof. I didn't. But because I needed to feel it. All of it. The loss. The betrayal. The quiet way someone you trust can turn into someone you don't even recognize. I watched the video over and over, not as a husband trying to understand what went wrong, but as a stranger mourning a version of himself that didn't exist anymore. And somewhere between the third and fourth replay, I whispered out loud to no one, "She's already gone." There's a kind of silence that only comes after you stop trying. Not the kind that follows a fight, loud silence, tense silence. The kind where you're both just waiting to see who breaks first. No, this was different. This was the silence that comes after surrender. After you've seen the truth with your own eyes and there's nothing left to ask, nothing left to argue, Nothing left to hope for. That was the silence I lived in for the next 24 hours. Emma moved through the house like everything was fine, smiling when she thought I was looking, humming to herself while she watered the plants, even reminding me we had that dinner with her boss next weekend. Don't forget. I nodded, said sure, played my part. But inside, everything had already ended. It didn't come with a dramatic confrontation or shouting match. No door slamming, no ultimatums, just a shift, something quiet and irreversible, like a thread snapping inside your chest. That night, she fell asleep early. She always did after those gym sessions. Maybe she dreamed of him. Maybe she dreamed of nothing. Either way, she drifted off easily, like people do when they have no fear of consequences. I laid there beside her one last time, not to make peace, not even to feel anything, but to say goodbye in the only way I could, silently. She didn't stir when I slid out of bed, didn't move when I stood at the edge of the room, looking at her under the soft lamp glow, trying to figure out how I had spent years loving someone who could lie so effortlessly. I didn't take much. A small duffel bag, my passport, toothbrush, 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, 1 jacket. I left the framed photos on the shelf, the travel magnets on the fridge, the coffee mugs she made us order off Etsy that said his and hers, even though she never used hers. I took nothing that belonged to us, because there was no us left. The house felt like a museum now, everything in its place, perfectly curated to tell the story of a marriage that had already died, only no one had taken down the sign yet. I stood in the doorway to my office, the room I used to retreat to when we were fighting, when I needed space to think, to write, to breathe. It was clean, too clean, like it hadn't been lived in for a while, like I'd slowly started disappearing from my own life without even realizing it. On the way out, I stopped at the kitchen counter. There was a little wooden tray there. She always used it to keep her rings, wedding band, engagement ring, 1 or 2 others depending on her mood. She'd drop them there at night like you might with loose change or old receipts. Symbols of commitment, tossed aside casually. Mine wasn't there. I'd never taken mine off. But now I did. I slid it off slowly, not because it hurt, but because I wanted to remember the feeling of removing something that used to mean everything. I set it down gently, right next to the gold band she forgot to wear 3 nights this week. Then I did something petty, or maybe symbolic. I don't know. I rotated my ring slightly, just enough so the engraving on the inside, the one she insisted we add, always us, faced up, perfectly legible. Then I turned and walked away. The front door didn't make a sound. It closed soft. No final bang, no dramatic farewell. Just a quiet click. Fitting. I drove for an hour before I realized I hadn't picked a destination. The roads were empty, cold air curling under the windows. Music off. No GPS. Just me and the stillness. Eventually, I pulled into a motel just off the interstate. One of those places with peeling signs and vending machines that only take exact change. The kind of place people disappear into for a night or a month. The receptionist didn't ask questions. Took my ID, gave me a key. Room 104. Smelled like cheap cleaner and cigarettes that never fully left. I stood in the middle of the room for a long time, duffel bag still slung over my shoulder, just trying to be there. Like if I stood still long enough, my thoughts would catch up with my body. They didn't. I sat on the edge of the bed, stared at the wall, and let the silence press in. I thought about calling someone. My brother. An old friend. Anyone. But what would I say? Hey, remember Emma? Yeah, turns out she's not who I thought she was. Turns out I haven't been living with a wife, just someone really good at pretending to be one. No, I wasn't ready to explain. Not yet. So I just sat there, in that motel room, with buzzing light bulbs and a stale breeze sneaking in from under the door. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought leaving would break something loose, that I'd fall apart the second I was out from under the same roof. But I didn't, because I had already fallen apart. Slowly, over months of silence and suspicion and half-truths I pretended not to hear. This wasn't an escape. It wasn't running away. It was a final chapter closing with no applause. I didn't leave because I was weak. I left because I was done. Done pretending. Done hoping. Done asking questions I already knew the answers to. The next morning, I woke to a text from Emma. Just one line. Did you take the car? No, where are you? No, are you okay? No, I'm sorry. Just panic about the car. That told me everything I needed to know. I didn't reply. I stood at the motel sink, washed my face with freezing water, stared at myself in the mirror. I looked like a man who had walked away from a burning house and left the fire behind. No more explanations. No more arguments. Just a quiet exit. A completed chapter. And the beginning of whatever came next. They say you can tell a lot about a person by how they react to losing something they thought they owned forever. The first message came just before noon. Not, where are you? Not, please come home. Not even, I'm sorry. No, the very first text I got from Emma, the morning after I walked out of our life, read, did you take the car? No greeting. No name. Just that question, like I was an employee who had taken the company vehicle without clocking out. I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't know how to respond, but because I finally understood how deep the disconnect ran. The marriage had ended the way it had been lived, quietly and unevenly. I gave her presence. She gave me performance. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message. Your card isn't working. Did something happen to the bank account? So now we're getting somewhere. It wasn't about me. It was about what had stopped working, what had stopped being available to her. Still no name. No emotion. Just logistical concern, as if her world had temporarily lost a few convenient features and she was troubleshooting. My phone buzzed again. And again. Mark? I need to pay the electric. Why isn't the rent draft going through? Are you doing this on purpose? Where are you? That one almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, it wasn't, but because it revealed the exact order of her priorities. First the car, then the card, then the bills, then maybe me, but not in the way you'd hope. Not out of love or worry or guilt, but because I was suddenly a missing piece in the infrastructure of her comfort. The more she messaged, the clearer it became. She hadn't noticed I was gone. Not me, the person. She noticed the functions I performed, the things I carried, paid, fixed, protected. That was the role I had been playing for years. Provider, planner, quiet cleaner of all the messes she left behind. The one who remembered her aunt's birthday. The one who sent the tax forms. The one who made sure the house insurance never lapsed. The man who could be leaned on so hard that I stopped standing upright. And now I was missing. And her world, the one she had curated around herself, was starting to list. She started calling people. I found out because they started texting me. First, Greg. My friend since college, who Emma always said she didn't get along with. He texted, "Hey man, Emma just called me. Said you're not answering. You okay?" Then it was Darren, my coworker at the firm. Then Rachel, my sister. Then my old running coach from the gym I stopped going to after Emma switched to hers. That one through me. He texted, "Hey, weird question. Emma just reached out. Said she's trying to get in touch. You good?" She was casting a net. Not looking for me, but looking for access. I sent the same reply to everyone. "I'm fine. Just taking space. Please don't share anything." Every single one of them respected it. Not because they were trying to pick sides, but because I had already quietly told them something was wrong. Long before I left, I had started softening the ground. Not gossiping, but preparing. Dropping pieces of the puzzle for the people who knew me best. I had learned the hard way that when things fall apart, the people around you can either become your shields or your mirrors. I chose shields. Emma, on the other hand, seemed shocked that no one was rushing to deliver me back to her. By mid-afternoon, the messages had changed tone. "I'm worried about you. Please just tell me you're safe. I don't care about the money. Just say something. I don't understand why you're doing this. Can we please just talk?" Still no apology. Still no mention of what she had done. It reminded me of those apology texts people send after being caught cheating, where they never say, "I'm sorry I lied to you," but instead say, "I'm sorry you felt hurt by what happened." All passive. All redirect. She wasn't asking about the truth. She was asking to reestablish control. When the bank account locked, when the joint card stopped working, when the automatic payments failed, that's when she noticed I was gone. Not when I left the bed. Not when I left the house. Not when I dropped the ring on the counter. She didn't notice me. She noticed the silence. And the silence was loud. I turned off notifications for the rest of the day. Left the motel. Drove further out, didn't matter where. I just wanted space. Not to be hidden, but to be still. To think without having to guard my thoughts. I checked into another motel 2 towns over. Smaller, cleaner. No vending machines. No Wi-Fi. Just a bed and a window with a view of nothing. And that nothing felt more real than anything I'd felt in weeks. I made a list that night. Not out of revenge, but out of clarity. A list of the things I had done for her that she likely never noticed. Set up her health insurance plan when she started her new job. Rescued her hard drive when she spilled wine on her laptop. Handled her mother's hospital paperwork while she cried in the hallway. Rescheduled her dental appointment 4 times. Replaced the toilet paper holder she broke and blamed on the dog. Paid for her car's oil change 3 times. Edited her resume at midnight for that promotion she said she didn't even want. None of it mattered now. Because in the end, the thing that finally got her attention wasn't the man who showed up. It was the system that stopped working. And that told me everything I needed to know. Love isn't tested when things are good. It's revealed when the glue starts peeling. When the engine stops humming. When the quiet hits. And when the quiet hit Emma. She didn't look for the man she married. She looked for the assets. Emma went to the lawyer's office like she was walking into a customer service dispute. Confident she could reverse the damage. She thought she could smile her way back into control. But when they laid the folder in front of her, documents with her own signatures, her face changed. Property transfers. Insurance beneficiaries. Power of attorney. She hadn't read a single line when I'd asked for those signatures. She trusted the one who paid the bills, fixed the gutters, and kept the wheels turning. And now, the house, the land, the car, even the dog, all mine. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. She built walls to keep me silent. But I'd spent years turning those walls into paperwork. And now she was locked out by her own pen. She found me eventually, at a bookstore in a quiet town where I was speaking at a local reading group. Her face cracked when she saw me. Not because I looked different, but because I didn't look lost. She waited outside, hoping for a word. I gave her none. A week later, I sent her a small box. A flash drive with old video clips. Me alone on the couch. Me cooking for one. Me looking at her from across the room while she stared into her phone. No message, no return address. Just a note inside that said, "You taught me to live in silence. I just learned to speak it better. That silence used to belong to me. Now it's hers."